Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram language design review about Tabular. Okay, do we want to look at the recap first, or do we not need to?
Well, the initial part of today's agenda is sort of a recap already, so I would skip that.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Rename column.
So these are functions that we went through already, and this is just to make sure that we are happy with design and we can close it and move on. This, I mean, the bigger umbrella today is data cleaning. So we have
Let me ask a
family.
question. When we have the custom named things, do we know the syntax for a custom named column here? What is it called? Is it the multi-argument key, or how does it work?
It was like extended key, prefix key. I don't remember what was the final decision. Rob, do you remember what was the final one?
It's extended key.
Extended key. Okay.
So that's what I'd write in here. If I want to delete an extended key column, that's what I would write here.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, so what does this do? What does insert columns do if the column does not have the right number of elements for the number of rows?
The padding or failing, depending on failure mode, I guess.
How do you specify
By default, we could pad. The discussion about how to fail is a separate discussion that you want to have around every tabular operation. And because this is something that's going to happen in a lot of cases. And also, yeah, sorry.
So, I mean, even in delete columns, there could be a partial failure, as in one of the columns is not deletable, but the other ones are. What do we do in that case? Yeah, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like A is there and can be deleted, but B doesn't exist. Do we delete A?
There are arguments for both. Like, if I want to delete A and B, and that's not possible, because one of the two doesn't exist, but that's not possible, I might want to be informed and reconsider. Maybe I did something wrong in my code. So there are always.
What would happen with a function like? What would delete cases do? It would just not. Well, delete cases is a matcher.
Not delete.
And it would not delete it, and it would just delete what it can delete.
Key drop and key take, they ignore stuff that doesn't match. So if you have key take of an association and there are keys, key take A, B, C, and you only have A, B, it will take A and B. It will do the intersection. So we can, we discussed many times, we can be lenient in the default case. It would be useful for pipelines to have a way to opt in.
Maybe that feels a lot like some of these failure things, like the whole confirm, whatever thing. Maybe there should be a wrapper that is a, controlled evaluation wrapper that says something like, strict operations or something. That might be a useful thing in general.
Whatever we do, I think that, for example, if you take delete, you pass a string with a single element, a list with a single element, and you try to delete the second, that issues a message and returns unevaluated. That I think that would be the worst case. We either return failure or return the tabular with undeleted stuff. Those are the only possible two modes, I think.
Well, okay. Anybody? This is a thing we're going to have to discuss in a subsequent meeting. But the idea of a wrapper that is a strict block type thing, is it crazy or not?
I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the evolution semantic. Is it a hairdresser for the function, or it is a
no? I was thinking it was a wrapper. I was thinking what it would be.
So it's like a block construct,
evaluate of delete columns or something. Maybe this is crazy.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like. I think it's a little crazy. I think it feels a little bit like. Well, I know parallelize actually only goes one layer in, but it's a little bit like something like parallelize, where it just becomes very imprecise and it's not, you don't trust it to, yeah.
Well, it also has to be hold first or hold all, and people always have headaches with hold stuff.
Well, is a headdress more interesting?
Why not an option?
Yeah, I guess so.
That seems like that's the way we would do this anywhere else.
Okay, fine.
I would do an option with a dollar variable.
Yeah.
It's a default value for that option.
Yeah,
so you
that's
can
good.
set it for your whole session and be happy if you want. And if you don't care about it, you will never see it.
Or if you do want a wrapper, you just use block.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what would it be? It would be something like,
Well, I think it's sort of like the failure action we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that could either be a very simple thing, or it could be a whole association of different kinds of things to do.
I was thinking
set as a dollar
association. Yeah.
variable.
If we have more, that gives flexibility. If we have more things to control.
Okay. All right. Combine.
Now, sorry,
column.
just before we move, are we fine with the first three?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the second thing that means insert column is basically anything that can be converted to tabular column.
Right.
That would be the case.
With
Okay.
unknown padding, which I think could be the third argument.
Do we support lists for insertion?
I would hope so.
If we
this one here.
No. I mean, I insert A. Can I insert A and column B? Because if we do that, padding doesn't make sense, or it has to be a list of the same length or an association.
No, I'm saying that here,
Yes.
I would assume that we can say, A goes to this, B goes to whatever. B goes to something
Exactly.
else.
But
and that could be an association as well.
But my point is that for typed something like this, which is not a matrix, it's like different types, the padding needs to be specific by column.
I see what you're saying. So, I mean, probably that has to be then maybe a third argument, which is, well, okay, so there are two possibilities here. Either the third argument, which I don't like very much, is the padding argument, which says what to do, or
exactly,
perhaps better, and this is an interesting construct in general, one could say padded of this, comma, blah, blah, blah. And that would be an interesting construct. In
I love that you are creating wrappers faster that you can even analyze.
Right. But in my opinion, I think this insert columns is nice as it is because it's very simple. If we want, maybe an easier way to do padding is just to set up padding for tabular column and just have that work. And then they could put the padding they want, padded or padded, pad left or pad right around the tabular column thing.
That's possible. I think this is a somewhat interesting construct in general that I can imagine being useful.
How's that connected with array pad? Is like an inactivate?
No, I think it would be some kind
not
of
inactivate. It's more like an operator form where you don't have the
thing that does an operation.
Exactly. This is a pad right where you provide later the length you want to pad to.
I think so. I mean, it would be something where you'd say padded of this. For example, let's say you say partition padded. This may not be a good idea. Okay. It may not be a good idea. Like this. And it would do the obvious thing. It may not be a good idea. But I like
it's complicated because you would like you need like some left, right.
With the extra arguments of partition, that would be a complete nightmare.
Exactly. I was about to go there.
Yeah. By the way, I hope we have an LCC discussion about an association form of partition that gives us a named way of accessing its various features.
I mean, well, I don't think that's. We can talk about it. I mean, we've done some looking at it. I'm not sure that's really going to solve the problem, but.
Okay. All right. Can we make sure that that's brought into an LCC?
It's on the list even already.
Okay, good. Okay. Are we ready to go on here?
Yes. So the design for this is something that we looked at, but more quickly than the stuff above. So this needs a final approval. Now, we have two functions, combine columns and separate columns. The proposal here was to subsume them in transform columns. Combine columns is fairly simple, in my opinion. So the old syntax was like A and B get combined in C using the function f. And you can rewrite that fairly quickly using transform columns.
I consider this fairly obscure.
Yeah, I think we prefer the second one.
Right, but what you can't do is to have simple idioms, string names of common cases in the transform columns.
Yeah, that was the advantage of combined columns. That you
well,
could
what
have
are
named...
the things we want as the idioms?
Well, I mean, look at the reference page. Well, it's called column combine. It was just a rename there in the reference page.
Column combine?
Yeah.
Well, I don't see anything special here.
Common combine function cfunc. Okay, but these are just functions. I think the one that was more interesting was column separate. It was taking special things.
Yeah, I think maybe we didn't work on this one in that sense.
Right. Okay, so let's understand these things. Okay, so separate columns. Column C.
Okay, so the extension for separate column is slightly more convoluted in a sense that it is an extension of the syntax of transform columns, where you allow the left-hand side to be a list. Exactly. And here there's also, again, we go back to failure action, because this, of course, makes sense only if F is producing F applied on column C, if it's producing a list of two elements. Now, again, you have multiple things you can do. You can fail. You can do missing. And I guess these two are the ones that are would be most.
Okay,
most
but let's
reasonable.
just try to understand this. Okay.
Yeah.
This thing where we've got these two columns. And I mean, I'm not convinced that we need anything special here, because I feel like, I mean, don't we have the notion of a date value, for example, that will be exactly, let me just write out what it would be. Okay, so if I say date value of now, comma, hour, minute. Beautiful.
Yep.
See what I'm saying? So now the question is, I don't know whether date value has an operator form, for example. I don't think it's particularly necessary. I mean, in other words, you got to say what column is going in anyway. So I mean, to me, that's pretty elegant. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it also solves the problem with the design notebook that why should date value or date give our year, month, day versus some other list?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the right way to do it. I think you can't satisfy people. It's just I don't see This seems pretty nice to me. Now, this particular thing here, where you're saying spread this into a list, I don't know. You have to know how to do it, but once you know it, I think it's going to be fairly natural. And I think it's, and presumably you can give a list of things here where it can either be, a single column is combining or two columns are being, I think this looks pretty good to me.
Yeah. You can do several operations together, and also this work in transform columns. And of course, if it works in transform columns, it will work in construct columns. So if you want to do only those two columns, that's also doable, which is an advantage.
Wait a minute, construct columns. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Is the one that makes only the columns that you list explicitly.
Right. I like it. And I like the fact that you can, separate, combine, etc. in a big list of things.
Yeah.
It's a question from Seth on our live stream. Insert, the third argument specifies the location. Will insert columns have a similar feature? Well, that's relating to this padding stuff and so on as well. So that's,
yeah. But remember, Stephen, it uses your anchor column idea. Do you remember what that is?
No, I remember what that is, but yeah. There's two different issues. And I don't know quite what Seth is referring to here, actually. One is, where is the new column inserted? And the other is, which row?
I think is that because I mean, the last argument, the second argument
how the anchor
is
column
where
thing
to insert.
works. I mean, you say a column and then it's inserted after that column, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. So you could just use say it had column, D, you could put D, comma, A goes to padded, and A would be inserted immediately after D.
Right. So let's walk through that for a second. So it is things without rules.
Yep.
Are anchors. So in fact, presumably I think it's actually fairly nice, that mechanism.
The only downside I can see of it is if you want your column to go at the very front of everything, it's kind of hard to do that.
Why? Why don't you just do this? Why don't you put, and this should work. If X is the first column, then just put it there.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be behind. It has to be, look, what has to be true is it's a bunch of triple blankery. Okay? It's basically the first element in the match from a bunch of triple blankery. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
In other words, if you take the column names and you go triple blank, X, comma, I don't know if this is, you get what I'm saying. You're finding the first
I get what you're
match.
saying. But if X is not included, we append at the end, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, fine.
But X is an anchor, so it says you've got to have it be in the order where X comes after this column, after the A column.
Yep.
So one question here: what if your original tabular has XY and you write here YX, like YA, comma Y, comma A, comma X? Okay. So we don't allow to reorder things with this syntax. Okay.
The only problem I can see with that case is if you do, say, A goes to, so you just rule A with A, rule with B, and then you use A as an anchor column.
You can't do that. How can you insert a column? You've got a column called A, so A is not A can't be an anchor. You're inserting a column called A, and there can't be two columns both called A. So therefore, A can't already be present. So therefore, it can't be an anchor column.
But see, the thing is, so transform columns, the way it works as it goes through the successive things is with fold. So every time you put in a new column, you can use that new column in subsequent rules in the functions.
Wow. I would never have guessed that.
Yeah, that's...
I would never have guessed that.
Well, I think it's an important feature.
There's going to be scoping trouble with that idea. I am certain there's going to be scoping.
I think
a lot of the database does that as well. So
say it again. What?
Database stuff does that as well.
Well, that's not an argument for it. I think that's weird, to be honest. I think, hopefully nobody will ever use it, but I think it's weird to be sort of stateful like that. Let's I feel that this anchor thing is pretty nice. And I think I don't see a fundamental problem with it. And the idea that you can use A and then use it again as an anchor seems crazy to me. If you're that concerned about how it's being set up, use a different mechanism.
Yeah, fine. We won't allow A, if A is created as a column, we won't allow it to be used as an anchor.
No. I mean, rename columns, can that be done to reorder columns? Or do we have a separate reorder columns?
Well, you don't need that. You can use transform columns to reorder columns.
Well, rename columns
no?
has
I don't
rename
remember.
columns has a list argument that's not rules, it's just names. It has to match the length of the number of columns, and then that's a reordering.
But isn't it obscure to do it through rename?
Yeah, I think it's obscure. I mean, I think if there's a certain argument that we should have a reorder columns tab.
Well, I don't remember, Rob, do we allow naked column names in construct columns and transform columns? Because if we do,
you can't do it in transform columns. You couldn't do that because you've got to have anchors there. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, but in construct columns you can do that.
But it's not good.
You can say. And also with reorder column, you have the same problem. Are you reordering, partially reordering, or you are creating a new one with a new order?
I'm sorry, with reorder columns?
We had the reorder columns and we rejected it because it's just using construct columns, right?
Yeah.
Right. If you're
I see.
Unless we have some syntax to only somehow specify only a subset of the columns, it's just construct columns with, some permutation of the existing columns.
But how do you actually do it with construct columns?
Well, I think that in construct columns, we can.
But don't you have to say A goes to hash A?
No. A can appear by itself in construct columns to mean you want to include that column at that position in the constructed thing.
I see. So it doesn't need a function after.
Right.
So it's a little weird that in one case it's an anchoring. Well, actually, it's not so weird, I guess. Right. Okay, so in that case, it is the sorting, and in the transform case, it's anchoring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the thing that really bothers me about this is that I think that it's going to be quite common that one does transform columns a bunch of times. And at the end, for presentation's sake, or for bringing in just a subset of the data, one is going to have to do construct columns to just select a subset of the columns.
Yes. What's wrong with that?
There's no construct. Like if you do.
Well, wait. Sorry. I'm stupid. You can do that with part as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes.
But part.
Why do you need?
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I think reorder columns is not a good function to have unless we have something that reorders a column based on some criteria in the column, which I think we all agreed is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but what I was saying is that in general, the problem with part is that part cannot have since it's vararg, you cannot do an operator form of part. So if you're doing since Seth is listening to us, if you're doing Seth style // kind of chaining, there's no way to do that part. So you're forced to use construct columns.
Yeah, and what's the problem with that?
I don't like. I mean, if we're talking about having functions and aliases to do things, I don't like the fact that there's no construct columns it doesn't explicitly state what you're doing there. If you just have strings.
Well, what do you mean? You're saying that it doesn't say it's reordering. Look, I think
no, I don't care about reordering, Stephen. I'm saying you do a long pipeline of work, and in the end, you care only about the last 3 columns, and so you want to say just display A, B, and C. The only way to do that in a pipeline is with construct columns, and I think it's not the name I would grasp for to do that operation.
So it's not like a set documenting function call.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand your objection. I think we should go ahead with this right now. If it turns out that we are doing this all the time and people find it obscure, we can have a reorder columns. The functionality of construct columns will be there. Let's see if people are okay with it. Make sense?
Yeah.
Because to me, this is not that horrifying. But okay, let's keep going. All right, we wanted data cleaning, and this is about missing, right? Here. And are we ready to talk about pivoting or not?
I would talk about missing today, not pivoting.
Okay. What is pivoting?
Transposition.
Is why this doesn't? Are you on not on prototype?
No, I'm not on the prototype build.
Okay, fine. Then this is the reason why it doesn't.
Okay, all right. Let's go back to missing here.
Okay, so here there's some inventory of things that the point is like what can be encoded with the missing thing we have. Yeah.
Which of these does confirm deal with? Confirm do all.
Good point. Good point. We should map confirm and enclose like composition confirm on objects and figure it out.
So it's a different set. First, there's some here that maybe are, I think confirm handles some things like maybe like $canceled or something like that. I should check. I think it's documented though. But there's several of these that confirm doesn't handle. Like I don't think confirm handles indeterminate or undefined, overflow, underflow.
Maybe it should.
Yeah. Yeah, confirm. It's in the confirm reference page is the list.
Oh my. I don't have in product documentation for some reason. Didn't install. So who knows what this is. Okay, fine. Okay, so this is an interesting inventory there for confirm. Probably should be extended to those cases. Okay.
Well, there's some like indeterminate where I'm not sure confirm should fail on indeterminate.
Fair point.
The one I would really care about, because it happened to me, is terminated evaluation.
Yeah, that post states confirm. So yeah, I think.
No, I know, but that is really something that I don't, that's something
right,
that is a failure, and like
there's no reason for it to not handle it. So yeah, totally.
Exactly. Like it's not exactly what I wanted.
I really hope that time series gets finished soon. It's really upsetting to me that that's not done yet.
Christopher, is this parameterizable for confirm? Like,
is what for confirm?
Like, what if I care about failures, but I don't want to consider missing failures?
Then you should use confirm by or confirm match. I mean, confirm is basically just a special case of confirm by or confirm match with sort of a hopefully useful default.
Okay.
All right, let's take a look here. Okay, missing data method. That one. Missing behavior option. Gosh.
And Jose did a good job in updating the documentation of missing behavior. You asked for it. So if you want to open the ref page in CVS, there are new examples that explain in detail. Because missing behavior has two values, none or automatic. None is trivial, is don't do anything with that. But the automatic one is doing several things depending on the category of function that is applied. And I think it's very interesting for what we want to do in Tabular. Jose, you can confirm or deny that this is an updated page.
Yeah, I added scope examples, trying to explain those different categories. Yes. So I think the idea here is what to do when the function acts on a list of values and one is a missing. The automatic behavior is to ignore that missing. Then there are other cases in which we have vararg functions, other cases in which we have empty lists. And so rather than a behavior of what to do with a missing, it's when to return a missing.
What do you mean? When to return? Okay, but let's get some scope here for what we're trying to
So,
do.
so these are the current options we have to control missing behavior, which have been introduced in different versions with different needs. So the right is focusing, the right notebook is focusing on missing behavior.
Right. Okay, so let's just review what these things are. So missing data method is something that interpolates missing data. Is that a true statement? Roger?
It can interpolate, yes, but it also replace with some fixed value.
Okay, fine.
Mm.
All right. Missing behavior does what?
So it has two values, automatic and none. Automatic means for each individual function, it will try to do something that is nice to that function. Sometimes it's ignoring the presence of missing. Sometimes it's producing a missing. Yeah.
So for example, if I say 1 plus missing, what does it do? For missing behavior to automatic.
With plus, it will ignore that missing was there.
So it'll be just 1. It'll be as if it's 0.
Exactly. But with times, it will return missing, for example. So the behavior is specific to each function. And I have those lists. In those excluded cells, you see the list of functions that are prepared to do that particular thing.
So in general, what it's saying is, if there's a missing in the picture, what is it doing? It's saying, if there's a missing somewhere in the function, gosh, let's see. I mean, it's as if there's another function that is invoked if there is a missing in the function. Because
yes,
in these things like plus and times, their own evaluation functions are invoked. And it's only because the missing just sits there symbolically that this missing cleaner ever comes through.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So missing behavior, just so I make a note here, only relevant for functions like plus and times, for functions that actually return a symbolic missing.
Well, it's very important for all the statistics functions too. And those act on lists.
Because mean, I mean, if I say mean of 1, 2 missing, I get back a missing there.
Exactly. Now wrap the mean in head with query.
What do I do?
Just another bracket. Yep. So their missing was ignored.
Oh, this is completely ignored, right, in the denominator as well.
Yeah.
Just to add a data point to this, in general, what happens as far as I know in data frames and SQL is that things like mean behave generally differently from plus and times and so on. So they're considered aggregations, and for aggregations, missings are ignored, and for row by row operation, they're contagious like indeterminate. And so I think this is why we have a different behavior for times and plus in this case, is that plus behaves like an aggregator and times doesn't.
Well, also just that the meaning of not including missing would be a little bit different, because plus, I guess that doesn't apply to this year. But I mean, it's just the identity would be different. Like it would be a 0 for plus and 1 for times.
Right.
I mean,
but
I think, but the stickiness of missing goes far beyond that, because like even Boolean operations can return missing. So if you compare, the question is like, is 1 equal to missing? You can either say false or you can say missing.
Well, missing is a weird thing to say for that. What happens with this? Does anything do something with this?
I don't think so.
What do you mean?
Well, if I do this, for example.
I mean, triple equals will certainly say no.
Yeah.
No, I don't think equal is supported in query. especially.
Okay.
I don't know why, actually, given that we have, maybe we don't have logical operations in general, like greater, less.
But in a certain sense,
I don't know.
Mathematica, the Wolfram language is well prepared for like three-valued logic here. If you think about like four argument if, and the fact that, for example, comparisons between things that are not well ordered return unevaluated, or even epoch can return unevaluated, that is kind of three-valued logic, right?
Yes. Okay. Let's missing data rules. What does this do? Semantic import.
This is only used for semantic import.
What should be considered missing?
Yeah, this is.
Oh, okay. That's on data
exactly.
import, and that's saying, which is something relevant to us. It should be missing data rules should be added to things like the CSV importer, should they not?
Well, I think if you scroll down, the syntax missing values has an option which is called missing value pattern. And we can look at that later, but this is closed, machine learning, missing value synthesis, and missing value pattern. But the point is, given that we have an option which is called missing value pattern, we have a long-standing tradition of having patterns followed by rule to do replacement. This way you could do missing value pattern. Missing value pattern is what you consider missing in the subsequent computation.
Okay, so you're proposing, this is crazy. Oh, missing value pattern is that. I see. So that's what would be considered missing, but that's not saying what to do with it. That's just saying exactly. That is missing. But now by default, it could turn it into missing of something or other.
Yeah, but my point is that pattern, and I don't know, maybe you can kill me here, but in replace you have a pattern followed by a rule. So I don't see anything crazy in having missing value pattern as a list of underscore integer, or like I underscore integer goes to missing I.
No, I understand. I mean, this is what you're saying is what is missing transformation? What is?
No, this is another topic.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the first question is, okay, there are two questions. In the importer, how do you go from a random thing like NA to a symbolic missing? That's question one. Agreed?
Also, is that supported by import, or we put there as something that we would like to be supported by import?
It's not, at least not in CSV. I'm not aware.
Right.
Okay, so then I don't know why we have that.
I don't think it's supported anywhere, but I think we should have it. I think it's a very useful thing to have.
Is there always a pattern like that? Like, I don't know, if you're importing from trying to think of a harder case, like if you're importing from a shape file or something, so you have some geometry and then some data associated with it, would there be some analogous thing you might want to be able to say?
I don't know what it comes in as. I mean, yes, you might say, look,
mental models.
Look, here's what you really want, I think. The missing value pattern applies to the thing that is brought in by the importer, the raw thing brought in by the importer. It's essentially a post-processor on, it's essentially, what it essentially is, replace with missing, blah, 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 blah. And then, NA or whatever else.
Well, a few questions. So the first thing is, okay, a couple thoughts. So the first thing is that this could be a format specific option. Like we have a lot of options, like there are options that only work with CSV.
Sure.
And I would argue maybe this should be something like that, because my guess would be that a lot of different options have different sorts of explaining what this pattern is even going to be matched to is going to be format specific. Like, is it matching to rows, or is it matching to elements, or is it matching, and JSON, what is it matching to, et cetera. The other thing would be, there are probably efficiency things that are, again, format specific. So for example, when we import a CSV, maybe Piotr could say more about this. First, you can get it as just a bunch of strings, and then you can get it as numbers and things, like strings and numbers, depending on if your numeric is true, right? And so, for example, would you want this to apply before or after? Because it might be inefficient if it does it after.
Right. I think it's best to apply it during parsing of the file. That would be the most efficient. And that we know that it actually is possible to create tabular, or in a sense, it's possible to, after that replacement, it's possible to import this as tabular column.
Okay, so in that case, though, so I mean, is that basically you're using some library to do CSV import, and it supports some sort of syntax where you can tell it to?
Right. So arrow library calls it null values. So we can basically use that option of the arrow library and pass this info.
But so, for example,
the answer is it depends.
Right, which is why I was arguing maybe there should be a format specific option that we can then write, a paragraph about for CSV and another paragraph about for JSON.
Well, but okay, so but it could still be called missing value pattern, but its interpretation could be format dependent.
So what about a situation where maybe, well, suppose that we have a similar thing where you can make an entire row missing or something like that, or like ignore entire rows. Maybe that would be a different option. Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to see if there are cases where you might want to have multiple options to do this for some formats.
Well, okay, ignore a row. What other operation do we have? Let's say a row is full of missings. What other way do we have to drop that row?
Oh wait, actually, I have, sorry, here's a case where you wouldn't want, or you'd at least want something a little more complicated. Would be in this column, a value of 65536 is considered null, but in this other column, that would be real data.
Yep.
I mean, that's fine. You could have a syntax for that, but again, it would be very format specific probably. Whatever syntax you'd have for that would have to be different for JSON.
Right.
But then even within CSV, how you would want to parse it would change depending on what you wanted to match for certain patterns. If you know ahead of time that you want this particular value to match like that, it's very different if you have 10 gigabytes of data that you're parsing. So you have to do some sort of inspection first to figure out which patterns you would even want to represent as missing with large data.
Wait a second.
That's where the parser concerns come in.
Well,
wait, you're telling
one
it what
question is,
patterns
okay,
you want to.
so here's a suggestion. First point is, what about an import element for CSV that looks for weird stuff, that looks for non-numeric stuff, for example, and just returns, the list of non-numeric things? Or for example, it could be non-numeric counts or something. I don't know if that's the right term, but that would give you an association of the counts of, this number of NAs, this number of whatever else. I mean, that would be useful in the 10 gigabyte case, right? That would be a highly useful thing to be able to get.
It's only quick to parse that to get that information if it's well-forming in the 10 gigabyte case, though. It's kind of the problem. So if it's well-formed data, right? Because if you are parsing it and
well, I'm sure you can find an efficient way to parse, to just search for the weird things in CSV. I mean, it's a regex basically.
Right, and the point is essentially that going into the import ahead of time, which backend you use to get which piece of information will change. A certain backend will give you.
No, you're not understanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you say import, file.csv, okay, and then comma non-numeric counts. That's all you're doing. That's all you're trying to get from this. You're not trying to actually get values. You're just trying to do a probe here. See what I'm saying? And that probe can be blindingly fast, done with regexes and things.
Well, it can't be. I mean, it still has to go through the whole CSV.
It goes through it as fast as it can get through 10 gigabytes, essentially. But that's why I'm saying if you have some information about what the file is, you can be smarter about how you're passing it and do it lightning fast. So the more assumptions you make going into parsing ahead of time, the faster you can do it. If you want to check for those more flexible things, you probably want to take a look at a smaller chunk of data.
Actually, I noticed Ahoy on our live stream commenting that they often end up doing in pieces what amounts to this operation. This operation is clearly useful for very large files. It's clearly a probe that you want to have.
Well, but I assume you'd probably have to give it. So first of all, I'm not sure it's non-numeric because CSVs often have strings and stuff. It's really just stuff that doesn't match. Like you'd want to run import and give it some kind of basically column type signature, or I guess it might be can derive one or something like that. I don't know, but like it would be how many things was there a value there that had to be discarded because it didn't match the types that were expected. That's what you probably care about.
Anomaly counts or something. But I mean, again, that could be, look, the fact is, in a perfect world, you'd want anomaly counts by column. The first thing is just the lazy version of what's the weird stuff in here. And the second version is per column, what's the weird stuff.
Is there a reason to expect that this would be, I mean, why? So, okay, I guess there's some memory efficiency reasons, but why would you want to do this as opposed to just try importing it as a tabular and then counting the number of missing in each column or something like that?
Just because it's a horrifying memory use. If it's 10 gigabytes, okay, and it turns out there's one weird missing somewhere, it would be super useful to know that. I'm sure for Sean's, blinding fast CSV import.
Arrow is so fast and multi-threaded that even on the 10 gig case, it's really not that bad to try it first and see if it fails.
Well, whatever. That's an implementation.
That is a useful.
Right, but I mean that's useful to know. But getting this is a useful piece of information for any kind of data. It's like how much stuff is there here that's sensible versus weird stuff.
It is, but the question is almost first like tabular Q. If I can import as a tabular,
yes,
this isn't very important, and we should just do that. If it isn't, then we should do a little bit more work, like you're talking about.
Right. Unfortunately, I am going to have to go because I have to do something else here. We will have to continue this at a different time. You guys could continue if you want without me. So, do you want to do that? That's a lot of unenthusiasm for that.
Sorry, I was muted. I mean, we reached the end of what we wanted to look at with you. We need to prepare material for people.
Right, fine. But I mean, you've already prepared something about missing. We just need more stuff with missing. I mean, there's missing importing and how you deal with missings, how you deal with turning things into symbolic missings in the importer. And then there's all the stuff about how the operations, the Fs and transform columns and so on, deal with missings.
Yes.
Okay. To be continued another time. Sorry, I have to go. See you all later.